Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today we'll Masechtas Taanit Daf Yud Ches. We are going to begin on the bottom of Yud Zayin with Beis, about 3 lines from the bottom. We were learning at the end of yesterday's daf that it's mentioned in Megillas Taanit that from Rosh Chodesh Nisan until the 8th, there is no hespedim, no eulogies. And we asked the question, why doesn't it just start saying from the 2nd? After all, Rosh Chodesh, you can't make a hesped. So I ended up saying that when it comes to Dini D'Oraisa, such as Shabbos, Yom Tov, Rosh Chodesh, of course that day is Asur Hesped, but the days before and afterwards is not, because Divrei Torah do not require Chizuk. However, when it comes to Dinner D'Rabbanan, they do need Chizuk, and therefore even Asur the day before. So the fact that we mention the 1st of Nisan will even Asur the day before. Now let's continue with the next part. Omer Mar, Mitam Yebei Ad Sof Moada. From the 8th day until the end of Pesach, again, Itoisav Chag de Shvuaya, there's a time of a holiday, Dolola Mispaid, that there should not be any hesped. We said, because by Tosim, they believe that Shvuah should always be on a Sunday, because when it says we start counting the Omer and bringing the Minchas Omer, it's done Mimecharas HaShabbos. Now, Mimecharas HaShabbos, to them, they literally think Shabbos means, as we know, Shabbos is a Saturday, and therefore you should start Saturday night, and therefore that's when Shavuos on the being. We understand that that's not what Mimecharas HaShabbos means. As far as Mimecharas HaShabbos is referring to the day after a day of rest, namely the first day of Pesach, which of course can fall on any day of the week. So Lomali, again, why does it mention Ad Seif Moed, Lema Ad Moed? Just let it say that it goes until Pesach, up until Pesach. In Umay Gufi Yom Tov the Asur, obviously on Yom Tov itself is Asur to have a hesped. So why does it say that we go until the end of Pesach? Just say until the beginning of Pesach, and then all of Pesach you can't have a hesped anyway. So Rapapa K'diyam Rav Lo Nitzracha, as we continue on Yud Ches Samad Aleph, El Asur Yom Shulafanav. As we mentioned before, the reason why we mentioned the 1st of Nisan is to Asur the day before, so Achanam will Nisrachel Asur Yom Shalacharav. The Asur is the day after Yom Tov. So the day after Yom Tov, if it was just Yom Tov because it's Deraisa, we don't have any Isser of Hesped the day after Yom Tov. However, since it's the Rabban which needs Chizik, so even Asur that. So come on, Krav Yosi, the Amr Ben Lefan Ben Lecharav Asur. That's according to the Shita that not only is a Hesped Asur the day before, but also the day afterwards. Yihachi. If that's the pshat, Be'esvatisha Nami, on the 29th also, my iri de havi yoima de mikame yoima de mitoikam tamida. Why do we say that the 29th is also also because that's the day before the takana from the 1st of Nisan? We said it's also also the day before the hesped. Tabli de havi yoima de baser as the tamnibe. There was actually something else that happened on the 28th. Of Adar. So because there's the Isser 28th of a Hesped, because of that Yom Tiv that was created, as we'll discuss what exactly happened on the 28th, so therefore the day after is also Asr. Again, not everyone holds that the day after is Asr. Some say only the day before is Asr. But according to the Shita, it must be the day after is Asr. So if the day after is Asr, so then, again, L'chaira, you shouldn't have to say, going back to our original question, that's the 1st of Nisan in order to ask the day before. The 28th will ask the day afterwards. How do we see something special about the 28th? The Sanya be'esem etam yibei asas sorta tavdal yehudoi. So there was this the information, bad information was given to the Jewish people. Dol yedinun min haraisa, that they shouldn't know from the Torah. That, as Rashi says, Shloih Srichin Levatel Metal Matayra Shenigzer Lehen Shloih Yask B'Torah. Again, they're now to learn. Shapamach as Nigzer Al Yisrael Shloih Yask B'Torah. Ushlo Yemoyelis B'Nehem. They shouldn't have bris milah. P'Shichalu Shabbosos, that they desecrate the Shabbos. So Ma'asa Yehuda ben Shamua, the Chaber, what did he do? I mean, this is obviously a big problem. So they went. Hochva Natal Eitza. Achas, she went to this particular woman, that all the great Roman officials would go to her. And she said to them, Imdu, stand up, v'hafginu b'layla, and you should basically approach them at night. So halcha v'hafginu b'layla. He said the following: Are we not brothers? Lo b'nei av echad anachnu. Do we not come from the same father? Lo b'nei em achas anachnu. Do we not come from the same mother? So this was the Rashi says Hafginu Saku. Cry out to them. As Rashi says, Yishamayim Garsinan Akashem HaKadosh Baruch Hu Hayitzoakim Al Oisim Shigosu Gezeres Kashais Ahayim Rahem Lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mechil Achichem. So the question, who are they speaking? Was speaking to Hashem or maybe to these people? Ma Nishtenenu Mikol Uma B'Loshen. Why are we different from all these other nations? Shatim Geizim L'Gezeres Rois Ubitlo. How could so Ubitlo V'Oiso Hayoim Asu Yomtiv? So because of their crying and beseeching that this should take place, so therefore it was miraculously removed. It was beautifully removed, and Taisus also discusses exactly who they were speaking to, Kadosh Baruch Hu. But regardless, we find that this terrible Gezerah was removed. On what day? The 28th. So it was the 28th. So therefore, if you hold, that's not only that day, but also the day before and afterwards, so the 29th is also not a problem. So then why do we need, if the 29th is already Asr B'Hesped on that end, so then why do we have to mention the first of Nisan to Asr the day before? The day before is the 29th. More answers, maybe it's not. So Rabbi Nisrucha El Chaydish Mu'uber. What happens, says Rashi, B'Shan Mu'beresh Sheyesh Ba Shnei Adar. There's an other alpha and base. V'Echad Chaser. The Hashtaki Havi Adar Sheni Moli Havi Yom Shloishim Lifnei Rosh Chaydish Nisan. So therefore, interestingly enough, let's say if we mentioned the third, so Rosh Chodesh Nisan, maybe when it's a Mu'uber, it'll cover day 30 of Adar. The 28th of Adar will only, you're right, will cover the 29th, but in the case that it's a Rosh Chodesh Mu'uber, there's 30 days of Adar. And therefore that's one answer to this question. This is question one. Isim Gemara Delanisach Rosh Chodesh Nisan L'michtam Megillas Taanit El Asiyam Shalfanav Kasha Mishum Hachi Namo Nisrucha Shechein Chavches Ba'adar Hu Yomtiv, but typically Medin Delacharav. So again, the first answer that we have over here is because what if it's a Chodesh Mu'uber, and therefore there's the 30th day. Weiter, Rav Ashi Yomer, he says a second answer. Afilu Teimul Chodesh Chaser. So if it's a Chodesh Chaser, so that's the 29th, L'chara, the 28th should cover it. So Kol Shalachara B'Tainis Aser B'Hesped. Kol Shalachara B'Tainis Aser B'Hesped Mutter. Anytime the day afterwards there's an Isser B'Tainis, but the Hesped is Mutter. V'zeh Hoyum Umutul Ben Shnei Yomim Toivim. Since it's put between these two Yom Tovim, Asu Ki Yom Tov Atzmai. It's considered to be like a Yom Tov itself. You feel Behesped Nami Aser. So in other words, what it's coming to tell you is that normally, if it's only a back end or a front end, so what will end up happening is it'll only be Aser B'Tainis, but it's not going to be Aser and a Hesped. So the fact that it's sandwiched in between the 1st of Nisan and the 28th of Adar, that 29th is to also make it an Isser B'Hesped. So that's the second answer. So again, we said that there's a that during this time there's Isser Hesped during this entire time. Why do we mention the 8th? Why don't we just say the 9th? Why, after all? Because the Tani Gufa Asr the Havali Yoima Itoikim Beitamida. Very interesting. We already said from the 1st to the 8th is already like this Yom Tov. So there's no Hesped then anyway. So why do we say from the 1st 8th and then like overlapping the 8th to after Pesach, start from the 9th? Because we already know the 8th from before. The Gemara answers Kivan. The Ilu Mikla Milsa Ubatlin L'Shiva. What if something happens that for whatever reason we're mavatal that part of Megillas Taanit? So Tani Gufa Aser. So the 8th day will remain Aser. To have a Yoima Kama di Taisa Be Chagad Shvuaya. So it's interesting. So even though they do overlap, we do want to still mention it because what if one of those two ends up being removed? So therefore, we want to make sure that that 8th day is observed. So Hashtas al-Hachi, now that we come up to this answer, Esamatisha Nami, you can say the same thing about the 28th of Adar. Kiban di'ilu mikla milsa. Ubatalino esrim v'tamnya. Let's say for whatever reason, this holiday of the 20th of Adar, which most people, until we just learned this Gemara, don't even never heard of it. So if it gets removed, which of course it has been, so Esamatisha Gufa Aser, we still want to make the 29th day Aser to have Yoma to come Yoma to take him to Mida, because it's the day before Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So that's the third answer to the question. Idmar Reb Chia Barasi Omer Rab Halacha Rab Yosi. Halacha, in fact, is like the sheet of Rab Yosi. Shmuel Omer Halacha Rab Meir. So we have this machlokus, who the halacha is. The halacha is like Rab Yosi or Rab Meir. If you look in Rashi, Rashi says Rab Yosi Yomer Bein Lafana Bein Lacharav Aser. That not only is the day before Aser, but also afterwards. Rab Meir, it says Rashi, Stamas Nisan Dektani Lacharav Mutter. The question is the day afterwards, after this holiday found in Megillas Taanit, is the day afterwards Aser B'Hesped. So it's a machlokas whether you pass like Rabbi Yosi, who says that even Lacharav is Aser, or like the Shita Rameir, that only Lafana but not Lacharav. Okay. So Halacha Rabbi Meir. Why does it say this 2 times? Behoin, as Rashi says, Deloilis Hana Behon, Umiksasain Delol Mismad Behon. Why does it say that? Loimercha Shehain Asurin Lifnein Lachrein. Shehain Asurin Lifnein Lachrein Mutarim. Yom Shmuel Halacha Rosh Gamliel. To come to tell you that the day afterwards is mutter. So Mikara Sabar Kivan Delay Katana Demeko Karem Meir Meir. Because he thought there was no other sheet that was more lenient than the sheet of Rabbi Meir, that's why he mentioned the sheet of Rabbi Meir. That says the day afterwards is Mutter B'Tainus, Mutter B'Hesped. Kivan Deshamel Rabbi Shimon Demeko Tfei. Once he heard the sheet of Rabbi Gamliel, who is even more Mekel, so Amar Halacha Rosh Gamliel. So you end up saying the fact that halacha is like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, that where it says Shehain Asurin Lifnei Machrei Mutar. Maybe I didn't read that properly. That only the day is Aser, but Lifnei Machrei even before is Mutar, which is a bigger kula. And therefore, originally he wanted to go Mekel as possible. So he thought the most Mekel opinion was contrasting Rabbi Meir to Rabbi Yosi, which is true. However, this sheet is even more makel because not only is it mutter but hesped lachareim afterwards, but even before. Okay. Ba'oli, which is the name of a chacham, Rashi says, Rabbi Chia barabba Rabbi Yochanan halacha Rabbi Yosi. Rabbi Chia leba'oli asrelach. The ba'oli I'm going to explain to you. Kiyam Rabbi Yochanan halacha Rabbi Yosi. When did we say the halachas like Rabbi Yosi that says that it's usher before and afterwards? Deloy lisana. It's davka on not fasting, but not about the hesped. So therefore, it could still be consistent. Maybe the halachas like him regarding that you're still not to fast before or after. However, hesped may be allowed. We also in Afal Mishomer Makdimin V'lo Machirin, even though we mentioned before that we are makdim, we make things earlier before its time under certain circumstances, and we don't make it machirin, we don't push it off, make it afterwards as we continue to Yud Ches Amud Beis. Mutorin behesped v'tainus. It's still mutter with a hesped and a tainus. So it says beferish that's mutter b'tainus. Now what is this talking about? This is actually going to reading the Megillah. It says the top Rashi, B'nei Tesvav. Those who are surrounded by a walled city from this Yeshua known as mentioned in Masechtas Megillah, which we're going to be seeing soon. Kreis Megillah the Krachim Kodim Zmana. Sometimes they read before their time. There's those different possibilities because, as the Mishnah over there discusses, we want it to be sometimes makdim l'yom hashuk, to be able to have the Megillah at a time in which people are going to the marketplace anyway, which are Mondays and Thursdays, and therefore sometimes the Megillah reading could be made all the way to the 11th of Adar. Shekvar makdimun liyam hachnisa, as is the language. Fine. So it says that though that's mutar b'tainis and hesped, we'll have to see what that's talking about. It says right. So Amos. The Gemara asks, when is this? Elim b'nei chamesar, the people in the walled city who normally are on the 15th. They could carly bar besar, and they'll end up reading on the 14th. Umi shari. Are you telling me they're allowed to have a hesped and a tainus on the 14th? No. But some Megillah's tainus, yoyim arba aser boy, yoyim chamisha aser bo, yoyim purei nun, as days of Purim, deloyla misped behoin. There's no hesped during that time. So the 14th and the 15th, it doesn't make any difference. That's for sure not allowed. Yom Ravel and Isracha el aser shel zeh b'zeh shel zeh b'zeh. Even to aser the 15th, the cities which are walled, the 15th, they're not allowed to have a hesped on the 14th, or people who are non-walled cities, which is basically everywhere in the world, can't do it on the 15th. So Rashi says, B'nei chamesar k'goyin sheholach l'kfar v'kar imahen, and he reads with them the Paruz ben Yomi nikr Paruz, Kermi Megillah. So it's brought down, Daf Yotes, Mesachtas Megillah, that as long as you go there for one day, it's considered like you're in that town. So again, it's beferish, that can't be talking the 14th or 15th. Vel b'nei arbesar, people who would normally read the 14th, but we make it earlier, v'kakari le b'tleasar, and they could read it on the 13th. So again, for example, the 13th is a Thursday, so they can go from Friday to Thursday. So it says, oh, okay, so on the 13th, it's okay, it's mutar b'tainis b'hesped. That's not true. Yom Niknerhu. It's a day which we'll discuss later on what that is, but Yom Nikner is asr b'hesped b'tainis. Del b'nei arbesar v'kakar le b'treasar. So maybe it's talking about the 12th. Says Rashi, but shechol yodal b'revi b'Shabbos. Let's say the 14th falls on a Wednesday, so they'll be able to, the Yom Hachnis will be on a Monday. So which again, if Wednesday is the 14th, then Monday they can read, which is the 12th, and therefore it's saying you could fast, you could do a hesped on that day on the 12th. It's not true. Yom Turyonosu. We'll discuss what that is, but that's also asr. El Wav the Kakarule b'Chadesar means that they read on the 11th. So Rashi says, imagine that the 14th falls out on a Sunday. So you can push it back, you don't go forward, they go before, which would be the 11th. So what do we see? That even though it's the day before the Turyanus, you're still allowed to have a hesped and a tainus. Now, Yom Turyanus, right, and even though the 12th day, so l'chayra, we must hold like Rabbi Gamliel. It can't be that the day after is Aser, because that's the sheet of Rabbi Yossi. But the day after should not be us if it's Aser b'tainis v'hesped. So how could we understand this case? We're only understanding it possibly that it's for the 14th to the 11th, but still the 11th is a problem. We're saying it's mutar b'tainis v'hesped, but that's the day before Yom Turyonos. Lo b'nei arbeiaser v'kakar le b'treaser. That's the 12th. What do you mean? Yom Turyonosu. Certainly, you're not allowed to fast. How can we allow it on the 12th? So Yom Turyonos gufi batuli batluhu. As we said before, sometimes these days are removed, and therefore the 12th becomes batal. Hoyel v'nehergu bo Shemaya be'achia achiv. Because Shemaya and Achia, his brother, died on that day. It was a terrible tragedy. And Rashi says, Chasidim hoyu, v'lo pirish mihem. It doesn't really explain who they are. The oisei she'achu ha'aryeh Ido haya v'lo Shemaya. We know that Ido, as it's brought down in Navi, he was the one who was consumed by a lion. So it wasn't Shemaya and Achia. So nonetheless, or Achia. So it's not so clear who they were, except that they were great people. So because they died, we can't consider this as a special happy day anymore. Kihad Rav Nachman Gazer Tainisa B'Treyaser. He was Gazer fasting on the 12th day, even though it was Yom Turyonos. Some were upon Yom Turyonosu, some Malay, Yom Turyonos Gufi Batuli Batluhu, Hoyam and Hergubo Shemai V'Achia Achiv. So that's what it's talking about. It has nothing, it's not a raya, therefore. Either way, Rabbi Glil or Rabbi Yossi, it's talking about it's the 14th, and you read on the 12th, so it's mutter behesem b'tainus because of this tragedy. I have a table to have a Yomi Shalifni Nikanor. Why don't we say, still an issue, the 12th, okay, fine, we removed Yom Teryonos, but assuming that Yom Nikanor has remained intact, so didn't we say that the day before a special Yom Tov Megillus Tainus also is Aser B'Tainus Behesped? Jamabashi Hashta Ihu Gufei Batluhu, since Yom Teryonos was removed, Mishum Yom Nikanor Nekav Nigzar. Does it make sense because the day before Yom Niknar we're going to end up saying you're not allowed to fast? No. If because of these great people, Shemai and Achia, that died, that we said you could fast, and there's a hesped, you can have hespedim because it's a sad day, actually. So we're not going to say, oh, actually it's a happy day now because the day before Yom Nikanor, Yom Teryonos itself got removed, the day itself. Okay. So my Nikanor, or my Teryonos, what are these days? The Sanya. Nikanor, again, obviously this is a festive, great thing that happened. Echad mi iparche Yovanim. There was one of the leaders of the Greeks, Haya. He used to literally wave his hands toward them, like to instigate them. When is this going to fall into my hands? The air masena, that I'll trample them, and it. This is Chanukah, which happens to be what we're learning right now. It happens to be Chanukah. That when the Chashmonoim were victorious over the Syrian Greeks, Kitsu b'hoynos yadav araglov, they cut off. We find this a lot of times in Navi as well. The cutting off of the thumbs and the fingers and the toes. The tolim b'shar Yishalayim, and they hung them on the gates. V'omer peshayim medaber begaiva, the mouth that spoke with hardness. V'yadayim shalayim anifay Yishalayim, and the hands that were waving against Yishalayim. Tiyos mehem nekama, let it be revenge against them. So therefore it was a very special day. We know this person who constantly threatened us, so this was Yom Nikanor. Okay, so my Teryonos, what was this other day that got removed? Omer, some would say, Kishabikesh Teryonos, when Teryonos wanted to hargas Lul Yonos, he wanted to kill Lul Yonos upapois Echav, and Rashi says, Achiv, Rashi says, Sadiq and Gemurim Hoya. These two people were great people. They wanted to kill them, Beludkia. Normalhem, Mimi Amoshel Chanani Mishel Azaria, Atem Yavo Elokechem V'Yatzaleschem Miyadi. Is there anyone that's able to spare and save them, just like among the days of Chanani Mishel Azaria? Kederach Shehitzeles Chanani Mishel Azaria, just like they were saved when they were thrown into the Kivshan Eish, they were thrown into a fiery furnace, so they were saved. So is there anyone that will have this happen again, that they'll be saved? Miyad v'azar miyad nebuchadnezzar samalo chanani mishal v'azar yat tzaddik and gemurim hayu. These, you can't compare that. These were tzaddik and gemurim. Beruin hayu le'asos hamneis. Miracles were bound to happen to them. And not only that, Nebuchadnezzar melech hagun hoya. He was a proper king. Beruin le'asos neis al yado. It was fit that miracles should happen when he threw them into the fire. Vosa Russia, but you, headed you, you're a nobody. No, Hashem's going to be like, I'm not going to waste miracles with this guy. Va'anu, and we, nischaivnu kal yolamakim. We deserve to be destroyed and punished by Hashem. Ata hargenu. If you don't kill us, harbi hargim yesh lamakum. There's a lot of ways to die in this world. By Hashem. B'harbi duvim barayos yesh lo makom b'olamo. There's a lot of wild animals and and lions and bears. Shepoigin banu that may encounter us. V'hargin osanu and kill us. El lo masarnu hakadosh baruch hu biyadcha. Let it be that Hashem should not put you in His hands. El she'asali para domein biyadcha. But in the future, you will pay the consequences. Alachas Afal Pikain Hargan, even though they gave this powerful speech to maybe persuade him not to touch them, they killed him. Yad Amru Lozaz Mishamat Shabo Diapole Maraimi. The leaders of Rome came, Upatsu es Moicha Begizrin, and they actually took him and scalped him, killed him. Let's look at Rashi. So where was this? So the Gemara in Baba Basra, Harugi Lud. So he says like this, he Lud. When it says Beludki, it's Lud. And some say, Harugi Lud, Ein Kol Bir Yechoy Lamad Mebichitzas Megan Eden. They're such great people that no one could even come close to them in the world to come. Deish Oimim Shenehargu Al Bitoi Shel Melech, that they were killed because of the daughter of the king. Shenimsas Haruga, that she was murdered. And obviously they didn't do it. But as Jews, of course, become scapegoats, Yomru HaYehudim Harguhu, the Jews were accused of killing. The Gozu Gezerah Al Shel Yisrael, so they're going to kill many Jews. Amdu Elu Padu Es Yisrael, they redeemed the Jewish people. But Amru Anu Haragnuha, it was us, we did it. The Hargamelch Elu Bilvad, and he only killed them. So that's how some people explain that this was what it was. And obviously they stood up and saved thousands and maybe who knows how many thousands of Jews by doing this. So this was Yom Turyanos, which again ended up being removed. All right. So again, why was this? It wasn't a good thing, but again, eventually that person was punished. Okay. Ein Gaizun Tainus al Tzibra Batchil B'Chamishi, Ein Gaizun Tainus B'Rosh Chadashim B'Chul. The Kama Havi Haschal, what's considered the beginning? So Rav Acha Omer Shalish. So he says, look at the Rashi, Shenu Masik Lachar Mikan, that we don't stop. So he says 3. What does that mean? So let's continue. Rabasi Omer Achas 1. Says Rashi, Amaroinin hu delav orcha the tanu lashtuya b'gemara ki hagavna. So the machlokas if it's 3 or 1. Achas. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Zudia Rav Meir. She'amar Mishum Rav Shimon Gamliel. Avachacham Amrim Mis'anu Mashlim. You fast and you complete it. Darish Mara Sutra Mishmei Rav Huna Halacha Mis'anu Mashlim. Halacha is you should continue fasting all the way until the end. Okay. Ad Chashecha until the end. All right. Hanalach Seder Tainus Ketzad. Hanalach Seder Tainus Ketzad. Hanalach Seder Tainus Ketzad. Just see the first line and we'll stop. Seder Tainus Elu. When it comes to the order of the fasting, it says Rashi, Shebatchila Yechidim Asanin Seder Tainus. As we said, the first set was the Yechidim, the Chachamim that fasted. V'achach Sibor. And then everyone fasted. Haychim Asanin Ad Yud Gimel. It would be 13 total fasts. Imlonana if they were not answered. So it says Mishnah, Ha'omer b'Ravi Rishoina. This is referring to the first rainfall. Says Rashi, Im Avar Zman Ravi Rishoina. If let's say the first rainfall comes, Shel Yarvul Yardu, it didn't rain, Misan v'Hoyachin Kaseder Hazeh. In other words, you have to wait until the normal time of what's called Ravi Rishoina. Avot Smachim Sheshinu Masriin Alehin Miyad. If let's say there's a change of that which is sprouting, then we're Masriin Alehin Miyad. In other words, sometimes we will wait until we start the process, and then sometimes we will not wait, but rather we will call out to Hashem immediately. It says Rashi, Shishtanu min hagan tachas chita yatsa choach. So let's say instead where the wheat would grow, there would be thistles and thorns, and it'll end up not growing properly. So you know that it's a major problem. So you're able to step up right away. And obviously we'll see the rest of this on tomorrow's daf. Let's see maybe another question or two. Question 2. Megillah Nikras B'Yadal B'Yadbeis Gimel Dal Tesvav Elu Yomim Me'elu Mutar B'Hes B'Tainus Elu Sorit. So we ended up saying in our sugya, the 11th and the 12th are mutar. The 11th, of course, is mutar, and the 12th is also mutar because we removed Yom Turyanos. The 13th, 14th, and the 15th is Aser. TA 6. Yom Nikandor Shehu Yud Gimel Adar, which is the 13th of Adar, which we just learned about. Madua mutter behesped b'tainis lefanov. Why is it allowed? And the answer is because since this is question 6. Since it was Shemaiah and Achaya Echov were killed, therefore they removed that 12th day, which was Yom Teryonos, and Kavachaimer Mahad Betulius Yom Teryonos. Since they were Mavatal that day completely, and therefore it was Mutter B'Tainus and Hesped for that reason. So certainly the day before Yom Mikanor, we would still fast. We'd still be able to have a Hesped and Tainus. Question TB8. Me'amasai masriyan al shul yardu geshomim le'ilonois himasun al chayle ha'askara. This is obviously going to be on tomorrow's daf, so we're not going to worry about that right now. Let's see. Question 7, 21. Is also a fun of ulacharav even afterwards. How, in which way is it more lenient than Yom Tov itself? And when is it considered like a Yom Tov by its Yom Tov? So im ze rak lefanav ulacharav muter behesped, ve'im ze gam lefanav ve'gam lacharav aser gam behesped. So it's a beautiful question, actually, a new fresh question. Is that the only why we said why do we have to have a Rosh Chodesh the first day of Nisan if you already have the 28th of Adar? So the 29th is certainly Aser, but the 29th would maybe be only Aser b'Tainus but not behesped. The fact that it's sandwiched in between both is a reason that it's even Aser behesped. Ad kan.